Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
We got a big show today. I'm pretty excited. So we've got Nina Turner from the Bernie Sanders campaign. She's going to preview his big speech on Medicare for All. And this is interesting. We did a segment with David Sirota, also from the Sanders campaign, and he called Third Way corporatist. They did not like that, so we're having someone from Third Way on today to tell us why they are not corporatist. All that and so much more coming up today on Rising. What are you looking at, Saagar?
A little bit more of an uplifting topic today. So 50 years ago, astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Mike Collins, they were zipping through interplanetary space on their way to the moon. 2 days later, they accomplished the most astonishing technological feat in human history, fulfilling the promise of a young president shot down far too soon. We honor their legacy today, but it's also worth noting how much we have failed our predecessors. A year before we went to the moon, the film 2001: A Space Odyssey was released. It showed a society with moon bases, technology. It was beyond comprehension. It was a society that triumphed far beyond the moon. Because at that time, it was inconceivable we would not be able to accomplish what was depicted. We went from putting a man on the moon in just a decade from putting a man in space. Just think about what else we could accomplish in 50 years. Think about it watching that movie at that time. We did all of this in the midst of the worst domestic conflict that this country has ever seen. When Apollo 8 rounded the moon, somebody wrote to one of the astronauts and said, "Thank you for saving 1968." Yet in 1972, we made the fateful decision to cancel the remaining Apollo missions. We never dreamt that big again. Today, SpaceX and other private companies, they've sought to fill the void that has been left by the U.S. government. But in the interim 50 years, we have multiple disasters, a Russian-dominated space program, and the loss of nearly all U.S. government capacity to explore deep space, with vague promises from NASA that we're going to go back to the moon and eventually Mars, but in a decade or more, 2020, 2030, no exact dates. It's shameful, and it's disappointing to the legacy of the visionaries who looked at the moon and they decided that we were going to conquer it. So we have to go back, but it's just the start. We have to keep going to Mars and far beyond, because just like the Apollo missions, it's going to be extraordinarily dangerous. Along the way, though, we understood what it was actually like to be a great nation. And perhaps we can find our way back, and in the words of Kanye West, we can make space great again.
I love the Kanye quote in there. Help me understand, like, this is something that you're passionate about outside of this monologue today. What is it about getting to the moon, getting beyond, getting to Mars, exploring deep space that to you is important?
Going to the moon was never just about going to the moon. Going to the moon produced the microchip. It's the reason that Apple iPhones and all these other things can produce. It required 400,000 people to work on an astonishing technological feat. It was a national coalescing figure. I mean, think about it. 1968, mass riots, the Democratic Convention, Vietnam, 50 American citizens that were dying per day. But on December 24th, 1968, everybody sat around their television and they watched Frank Borman and Jim Lovell circle the moon from 60 miles high.
Right.
And we took that first photo of Earthrise, which was the Earth coming up as it came over the moon. It inspired the modern environmental movement. Going to space was about a nation that they were disagreeing on everything, but we would all look at that and say, wow, we did that. And there's something about that that's just gone.
Here's my question, though. I mean, that is gone, but I don't know if a similar moment would galvanize the nation the way that it did at that time.
Maybe. I don't know either.
If we planted a flag on Mars, I can't imagine that it would be the same sort of coming together moment that we had.
I think it would, though. I think it would, because we were just as divided, and if not more so. I mean, we were having a literal war in the streets in 1968. But everybody did come around the TV and say, wow, we did something. And I think there's a lot to be said for that benefit to our country. And I think it's just sad that we don't think that way anymore.
I like that take. Next on Rising, healthcare, Biden and Trump, just a few of the 2020 campaign trail conversations that Bernie Sanders is at the center of.
So, national co-chair of the Bernie Sanders campaign, Nina Turner, will discuss the senator's strategies and today's Medicare for All speech when Rising returns.